Shifting focus after its army failed on the battlefield 7 months ago. Instead of facts, Pakistan's army chief, Field Marshal Asim Munir, has opted to use faith. You know what he said? Pakistan received what he described as divine help during the military confrontation with India in the month of May. Let's just play out that statement for you.
हमने अल्लाह की मदद आते हुए देखी, महसूस की, और ये बुनियाद महसूस के अंदर ये हुआ.
Munir's comments come more than half a year after India carried out Operation Sindoor, targeting terror infrastructure inside Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. He made the statement at the National Ulema Conference in Islamabad early this month, where he quoted verses from the Quran and linked religion directly to military and regional security issues. And this approach follows a familiar pattern inside Pakistan's military establishment, by the way. The army has repeatedly used religion and God to avoid scrutiny and deflect responsibility. In the late 1970s and 1980s, former Pakistan President General Ziaul Haq deeply often intertwined the Pakistani state and the military with religion, promoting jihad as a political and strategic tool to legitimize his rule. And that legacy continues. Back in May, the Pakistan Army once again reiterated its ideological position, stating that Islam is the military's official training and operation guideline. The Pakistan Army's core motto remains Iman, or faith, emphasizing trust in Allah, a motto that incidentally was changed during Ziaul Haq's tenure. So by attributing military outcomes to divine will, Munir is basically placing the army beyond public accountability, because such claims discourage questions, protests, or even criticism from the Pakistani public and shift the focus away from operational failures in the name of God. Because the reality is this: Pakistan lost. Munir is yet to provide any material evidence to counter that claim. The timing of Munir's comments also is significant here, especially with context to Pakistan's current state of affairs. Remember, the country continues to face severe economic stress and remains dependent on external donors for basic survival, that too at a heavy cost. China is Pakistan's largest bilateral lender and primary arms supplier, but has led to growing debt and reduced sovereignty through long-term financial and strategic commitments to Beijing, while Islamabad's relationship with the United States has led to US President Donald Trump pushing Pakistan to send troops to Gaza. During the same address, Asim Munir issued a warning to the Afghan Taliban, urging them to choose between Pakistan and the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. He claimed Afghan nationals account for a large share of terrorist infiltration across the border. However, the Taliban has consistently rejected Pakistan's claims since returning to power in 2021, a period which has led to a series of cross-border fighting. In fact, Pakistan's military and state continue to mask the deeper realities confronting them with religious rhetoric instead of actually addressing their failures. Our top story tonight is from Bangladesh. It's facing a dangerous slide into chaos as religious hate mongers and lynch mobs appear intent to derail the country's fragile path back to democracy. And just over the past several days, WION has been telling you about how the power struggles are tearing Bangladesh apart following the killing of Sharif Osman Hadi, a polarizing youth leader who was also a candidate in the upcoming and highly anticipated general elections in the country. His death has triggered violent protests, attacks on Hindu minorities, and coordinated mob assaults on major newspapers and cultural institutions across the country. And these developments have raised serious questions about whether the unrest is being deliberately engineered to try and sabotage the process of democratic restoration, beginning with the elections. Before the dust from last week's violence could even settle, another student leader was reportedly shot at today. According to leading Bengali daily, Motaleb Sikdar, the central leader of the National Citizens Party Workers Organization, was shot in Khulna on Monday. Another newspaper, meanwhile, citing hospital sources, reported that he was shot on the left side of his head and was bleeding profusely when brought in for emergency treatment. Meanwhile, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party Secretary General, Mirza Fakhrul Islam, has also said that the attacks on media houses represent an assault on democracy itself. He said this was not merely an attack on the two dailies, but an attack on the democratic foundations of the country. He called on all pro-democracy forces to unite against what he described as an evil force. He made those remarks while expressing solidarity at a protest rally organized after the arson and vandalism on the ground at the offices of two prominent dailies. Also the harassment of the editor of New Age and president of the Editors' Council. Police saying 17 people have been arrested, 31 others identified in connection with the attacks. Dhaka Metropolitan Police Additional Commissioner has said 13 arrests were made by the local police stations, 3 by the Counter-Terrorism and Transnational Crime Unit, and 1 by the Detective Branch. Meanwhile, former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, has strongly criticized the interim government. In an interview with news agency ANI, Hasina said anti-India sentiment is being manufactured by extremists emboldened by the Muhammad Yunus-led interim regime. She accused the government there of granting immunity to violent actors, claiming that these were the same groups that attacked media offices, targeted minorities and marched on the Indian embassy. She said, and I'm quoting now, a responsible government would protect diplomatic missions and prosecute those who threaten them. Instead, Yunus grants immunity to hooligans and calls them warriors, quote unquote. And she further blamed the interim government for failing to maintain law and order on the ground, following the killing of Hadi, saying violence had become the norm while authorities either deny it or appear powerless to actually stop it. Journalists and civil society groups are now escalating their protests. Also, the Newspaper Owners Association of Bangladesh has announced plans for a nationwide journalist conference in mid-January, vowing to continue protests until those responsible for the arson attacks are brought to justice. Separately, Abdullah Al-Jaber, member secretary of Inqilab Moncho, has said that the murder of Sharif Osman Hadi must be tried before the elections, warning that there can be no credible vote without accountability. The police saying the prime suspect in Hadi's killing remains at large. Authorities have admitted that they have no specific information on the whereabouts of Faisal Karim, identified as the gunman. The detective branch chief, meanwhile, has said the killing appears politically motivated with no apparent personal motive, but added that all angles are being investigated. As Gaza remains devastated by the war and a deepening humanitarian crisis, the Trump administration has unveiled a sweeping and controversial proposal to transform the territory into a futuristic international hub. And U.S. officials have revealed a $112 billion decade-long redevelopment blueprint for Gaza, dubbed as Project Sunrise. The plan would reimagine the war-ravaged strip as a high-tech Mediterranean metropolis filled with luxury hotels, high-speed rail, AI-powered infrastructure. The plan is drafted by Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. According to reports, senior White House aides now being presented to the potential investor countries. It envisions a phased reconstruction of Gaza over 10 years, with the United States committing up to $60 billion in grants and debt guarantees towards the total cost. Now, in a parallel development, Israel's security cabinet has approved the recognition of 19 new settlements in the occupied West Bank, marking a major escalation in the ongoing settlement expansion policy. And this decision, put forward by the far-right finance minister and the defense minister, was described by Smotrich as a strategic move to block the establishment of a Palestinian state. Under international law, Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank are considered illegal, and this position has long been held by the United Nations and the majority of the international community, in fact. The UN Secretary General condemned the decision, warned that Israel's relentless settlement expansion fuels tensions, restricts Palestinian access to land, and also threatens the very possibility of a viable, sovereign Palestinian state. The move has drawn sharp criticism from global and regional actors. Saudi Arabia and the United Kingdom were among those to condemn the decision. In fact, the UK Foreign Office Minister warned that the announcement risks undermining the 20-point plan by the United States and jeopardizes prospects for long-term peace and security, which he said can only be achieved through a two-state solution. Violence in the occupied West Bank has risen sharply since the war in Gaza began following Hamas's attack on Israel in October 2023. And that surge has heightened fears that settlement expansion will further entrench Israel's occupation and irreversibly undermine the two-state solution. So that's the context. And according to Smotrich, the latest decision brings the total number of settlements approved in the past 3 years to 69. The United Nations has said settlement expansion has now reached its highest level since 2017. Around 700,000 Israeli settlers currently live in approximately 160 settlements across the West Bank and East Jerusalem, reportedly. And this land is central to Palestinian aspirations for a future independent state. In September, the UK, along with countries including Australia and Canada, remember, took the symbolic but very significant step of recognizing a Palestinian state. Israel strongly opposed the move, with Prime Minister Netanyahu declaring that a Palestinian state will not happen. On the ground, meanwhile, conditions for Palestinians have only worsened. Since the start of the war in Gaza, there has been a sharp increase in attacks by the Israeli settlers against Palestinian communities, reportedly in the West Bank, leading to the displacement of thousands. Israel army once again facing flak for reportedly shooting a 16-year-old boy. The army saying that they are now looking into it and investigating the CCTV footage in which the incident was caught. At the same time, Israeli forces have launched fresh strikes across multiple parts of the Gaza Strip. Local sources reporting civilian casualties and a deepening humanitarian crisis, displaced families struggling with the severe weather conditions, acute shortage of shelter, and a lack of basic supplies and medical care.